Viewers of the Civic Space TV, friends of the Youth Roundtable, welcome to yet another episode of the Youth Roundtable. Unfortunately, this particular episode comes at a time when the country is mourning the death of a gallant son of the soil, and the Youth Roundtable joins the people of Acholi and the people of northern Uganda, but above all, Ugandans, to mourn the death of a gallant son of the soil, the late, of course now, the late Rt.Hon Jacob Oulanyah, and I request that we observe just 2 seconds of silence before you can continue. Yeah, it's indeed sad when the country loses such a gallant and credible leader. By all means, a gap and a vacuum is created in the country's leadership, but we hope that the country can eventually put the pieces together and move on from this very trying moment. We shall later on have a conversation around that, but for now, let's dive straight into the conversation that forms the lion's share for today's discussion, which is digital rights in Uganda alongside emerging technologies. The question, of course, in the past couple of months and weeks has been that, really, do we have digital rights in Uganda? And if so, to what extent do these rights, go to the benefit of Ugandans? So the Youth Roundtable today convenes to have a conversation around the legal framework and really what right do we have in terms of accessing digital platforms, and to what benefit do they come to us as young people. So to join us, I'm joined by a panel of the two have been here before so far, and one person appearing for the first time, and I'll introduce them right straight away. From my extreme right is a comrade and friend of mine who I've known for, I think, close to a decade now. He is a young lawyer, I must say, and also the executive director. You should now transition to that level of executive director of the Simply Legal platform. Council Kahuma, you're most welcome. Say hello to the viewers, and you can introduce yourself further.
Hello, viewers. Thank you for that very awesome introduction, Mr. Moses Kidega. My name is Kahuma. I'm a lawyer and soon to be an advocate of the High Court of Uganda. I finished my Law Development Center last year, as I joined in 2019, but because of COVID, we had a few discrepancies here and there in the times of finishing. So I have been hosted on this channel before, and we talked about innovation and different kind of rights concerning that. Today I'm here to talk to you about different emerging rights in the digital space, especially concerning the legal framework. And yeah, I'm very happy to be on this channel. I'm a YouTuber. I host a YouTube channel called Simply Legal by Kahuma, where I simplify the law creatively for people to understand. And I'm also involved in other digital innovations, as we shall mention later on.
Yeah, sure. I have a couple of questions for you regarding your YouTube channel, but that is for a later time. Next to Terry is comrade Aweko Scovia. Scovia is equally joining us for the second time. Scovia is a PhD candidate of political behavior. Perfect. I got it right. Scovia, you're most welcome.
Thank you, Kidega. As you mentioned, my name is Scovia. I'm a PhD candidate. I focus on political behavior, specifically looking at issues of forced migration, political violence, and how that shapes our attitudes, preferences, and interests. And I'll, I think, explain further how that kind of connects to digital rights later on.
Yeah, very interesting background that you have over there. And we look forward to exploring more of that. Next to Comrade Scovia, and next to me is my friend, Comrade Denis Kipeya. Denis comes all the way from Bugishu sub-region, but also he is a member of the Uganda National Students Association, the executive committee, precisely Secretary of Information. So Denis, you're most welcome. It's your maiden appearance here. Do you feel excited being with us?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Can say hello to the viewers.
Thank you very much. Good morning to the viewers, and thank you, Comrade Kidega, for this wonderful opportunity. As he mentioned before, I am Kipeya Denis, Secretary in charge of Information and Publicity at Uganda National Students Association. Not forgetting, I hail from the slopes of Mount Elgon, that is in Bale, and a student at MOBS, Bale Regional Campus. Oh. I think, yeah, we are here basically to discuss digital rights in Uganda.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and we hope to explore the student perspective regarding this conversation. Councillor, let me start with you straight away. This will be more of a request. Could you give us the legal framework, the legal backbone of digital rights in Uganda? Are there actually laws in Uganda that are entrenched to foster digital rights and to encourage citizens to move towards the fourth industrial revolution, or the laws are actually lacking, and therefore there's need for us to maybe create amendments or do better in terms of the legal framework? So you can kick us off.
Okay, thank you so much for this opportunity to start off. First of all, the legal framework actually does exist. We already have laws in place. However, we still need some more laws. I'll give an example. Even starting away from the Constitution of Uganda, we have things like freedom of speech, enshrined under Article 29. Now, the Constitution is the mother of all of these different acts and other statutes in Parliament, or acts that we have in Uganda. When we look at digital rights, the first thing that comes to my mind as a legal person, I look at things like I've said, first of all, the Constitution, digital rights. Okay, first of all, before you got the legal framework, we have things like Twitter. We have different cyberspaces.
Okay.
We have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have Facebook. All of these platforms give people their own rights to freedom of speech and for freedom of expression. However, the framers of the Constitution in 1995 did not cater for the ever-emerging times back in the day, before I think most of us were born. Now, that must be exercised judiciously.
Okay.
We have things like the Computer Misuse Act 2011. That comes in to check us. I'll first start with things like freedom of speech and everything, everyone's right to say something. So when we have things like the Computer Misuse Act, it comes in to say, yes, you have a right to express yourself on a cyber platform, but you must do it in a way that you do not offend a certain person. So yes, we all have a right to express ourselves. That is enshrined under the mother law of the land, which is the Constitution. However, we have laws to put us in place. There are many situations where people have abused this right to freedom of expression on different social media handles. I'm sure all of us have had different names. I'll not want to mention them here because this is a safe space, but we all know them. But those certain persons have expressed themselves in a way that it offends other people. And to me, I believe that that's not right. So when you talk about digital rights, digital just doesn't go in accordance with your freedom of speech. We also have things like apps. We have things like Safe Border. We have different apps coming up. Moses, you're a software engineer by profession.
Yes.
So when we look at things like cyber technology, there are also rights which come into place concerning that. For example, we have the Trademarks Act and the Copyrights Act. In fact, we'll start with the Copyrights Act of Uganda. Now, there are a number of laws which protect someone's expression of an idea. Now, many law students who may be watching this channel, you may be, especially those who have taken copyright law and trademark law, you can be able to understand where I'm going to here. But let me simplify it. The Copyrights Act of Uganda basically tells us in simple form that if I come up with an application and this application is very unique, it has a unique source code, or it has, in a way, a different way of approaching our day-to-day lives, then I have a right to protect my copyright or my invention. Because the moment I do not have that, then anyone can steal your idea.
True.
So we also have things like the Trademarks Act. I'm sure you've looked at Riham, you've looked at Coca-Cola. So I would term all of these as digital rights, because digital comes into place where we're going to have ads for these things. We're going to have ads for Coca-Cola, Riham. We're going to have ads for Jumia. But how does Jumia ensure that its rights in Uganda are protected? Then there we have things like the Copyrights Act, the Trademarks, the Trademarks Act.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just a brief on some of the digital rights we have.
Yeah, that's fair enough, and I think that's a very good background for us to begin from. Scovia, let me come to you straight away. Comrade Terry mentioned something that I want to emphasize on, the aspect of, yes, we have rights, but also as we espouse these rights, we shouldn't infringe on the rights of others. And I'll take you to section, I think, 25 of the Penal Code Act, which stipulates that actually annoying the president is an offense, you know. So people who go on their Twitter to rant and then to say all these things and end up maybe annoying the person of the president or the office bearer of the president, they actually commit an offense, you know.
I just want to just add on that a bit.
Okay.
You see, now that you've mentioned that,
Yeah.
I would like to actually back it up more. We have what's called the offensive communication under Section 25 of the Computer Misuse Act.
Yes.
So many people, especially on Twitter and Facebook, they have been in breach of that kind of right, or of that kind of section.
Yeah.
Because yes, you have a right to say, you know what, I'm so and so on Twitter. I don't agree with your opinions. But then there's a thin line between disagreeing with someone's opinion and then offending them. So that's where the Computer Misuse Act under Section 25 comes into play.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I brought out to back up your point.
Sure. And many thanks for that. So, Scovia, it looks like, yes, we have digital rights as citizens, but also these rights are limited, okay? You cannot express them to an extent that infringes on the rights of others. So what's your own perspective? Do you think that at times in our interest to espouse our digital rights, we end up infringing on the rights of others?
So I think with that question, we have to go back to the very beginning, you know, like ask ourselves what are rights and who actually defines those rights. And in the case of Uganda, I'm not even going to be shy about it. We all know that this is an authoritarian state. And so whoever is the president gets to decide at this point in time, you know, the way that our society has been structured, right? The government, not just the government, the president determines, right, what our rights are, right? To the extent that he can say that if you piss me off, you're going to go to jail straight away.
No,
and not just...
No, Scovia, these are laws.
Yes,
these
yes,
are legal
yes,
frameworks.
Codified through our parliament, but that does come from somewhere. To the extent that, you know, we have how many members of parliament who agree to the fact that, yes, if you piss off one man, if you, you know, insult one man and his family, you're going to get tortured, right? That literally tells you that, like, that in itself tells you the sort of state that we are living in as Ugandans.
So are you saying that the law is short?
Yes, I was about to go to, you know, like some of like the permissive behavior that, you know, laws are supposed to provide for us and rights are supposed to provide for us. Because if you tell me I have freedom of expression, right, as Terry mentioned, if someone is telling me I have, you know, First Amendment, free speech and all of that, that right in itself provides me protection from the government violating those rights. Not necessarily, you know, me coming to insult you and then I claim, oh, you know, that's my freedom of speech when I am infringing on your own personal safety and all of that. But at the same time, if you are at the helm, right, you're leading this country, right, and then you come and tell me you cannot insult me, when in actual sense, some of the things that we're considering as insults are, in fact, questions about accountability, right? People want to know how we're being governed. And that's the beauty of the internet and social media and all of that. It has made, to a certain extent, that access to information, both from the government and from other people, has kind of flattened our society a little bit. And the visibility of these top government officials is also, you know, shrinking that distance between the regular person and whoever is in power. And therefore, if I do not have access to your office, if I cannot walk into your office and ask you, hey, I don't really know what's going on, can you explain this and this and this? And then you claim that, you know, if I ask you a certain question, if I pose it a certain way on the internet, then I'm insulting you. Yes, I do agree that some people use foul language to address different forms of government officials, etc., etc. But I think that also portrays the level of frustration that we have with our elected officials and our leaders in general. And therefore, to take one person's insult and use so much power and violence against them, and you use the law to actually, right, enact violence on people, you're backed by those codified laws. That in itself tells me that, the society is still very much unequal, and we don't know how to use our laws or how to actually codify laws and rights.
Okay, fair enough. I will by all means have a follow-up question for you, because my concern is around the legal framework. Because if the law clearly stipulates that if a given offensive communication ends up annoying the person of the president. All right, thank you very much, our viewers. We hope that you are enjoying our conversation on the Youth Roundtable. As we were having this conversation, one of our panelists joined us, and the fourth panelist on this show, a comrade of ours, Comrade Lawel Muhwezi. Lawel is a legal scholar at Makerere University and also a member of the Now Generation Uganda. Comrade Lawel, it's good to have you again.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. I'm happy to be back. I hope we shall have an interesting conversation.
Yeah. Hope this time you're back with a bang.
Always.
Yeah. Thank you, Lawel, for always sparing the time to be with us. Scovia, you were trying to make a point, and I cut you short, but let me give you 2 minutes to make your point, then I will move to Comrade Denis.
All right, thank you. So one of the things I want to actually clarify is that I did not mention Uganda being an authoritarian state to slight the government anyhow. But I just want us to understand the politics and actually what laws mean in an authoritarian state. Because one of the reasons we have laws is to kind of structure society in a certain way. And when you do something wrong, there are legal measures that need to be taken, right?
Yeah.
Appropriate measures that are stipulated by those laws to kind of rectify,
Yeah.
right? And hold that person accountable. But what we're having in Uganda as an authoritarian state is that once you even abuse or insult the person of the president, right, you're immediately thrown in jail or a torture chamber, for lack of better words. And there is no legal remedy, right? There are usually no trials. And when we actually do hold trials, those trials are sham trials, right? But to the greater extent of it is, the question I asked is, where do our laws come from, right? Because if we think about it, right, at some point in time, slavery was legal, right? And now here we are saying if you insult the president, one man and his family, then you deserve to be jailed. You deserve to be tortured. You deserve all of these disproportionate, for lack of a better, actually not lack of a better word, disproportionate action towards you because you have said something, I guess, very simple.
Because then, Scovia, the remedy would be to amend the law. But if we are to follow the law to the dot, like our lawyers will tell you, section, I think, 25 or 26 of the Penal Code Act actually puts offensive communication or annoying the president as an offense. So unless we are to amend the law itself, if the state apparatus like police or the DPP comes after you, for annoying the president, then they are only doing what the law tells them to do. So unless you're saying there's need to amend the law to, remove certain provisions,
not just amend
but if we are
it,
to stick to the law, then annoying the president is an offense.
not just amend it, get rid of it. Because
Get
Kidega,
rid of it completely.
yes, if I annoy you, are you going to take me to court?
I think
Right. How are these laws applying to the general public? Because if it's just specifically towards one person, right, just the president and maybe his family members, right, then there's that disproportionate
imparity.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if I piss him off, he's not going to say, "Oh, Scovia pissed me off, so I'm going to take her to jail for pissing me off." Right. That's a whole different thing. Right.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Terry, you have a burning point.
Yes, I think the point, Scovia, I think both of you have a point.
Yeah.
In society, we all love to live freely, but this freedom has to be checked. There have to be checks and balances. So, yes, it's an offense to annoy the person of the president. However, Scovia's point is that if you do annoy the person of the president, the measures of consequence should not be so extreme, right? I think that's what you're trying to say.
No, that's not what I'm trying to say.
What are you trying to say?
Annoying we shouldn't even have a law saying if you annoy the president, then you go to jail, or we have these legal actions against you, right? Because as I'm saying, if I annoy you, right, like it is a disagreement between the two of us, right? You're not going to take me to court, you're not going to take me to jail. But if we're having these applying laws to different individuals in a different way, then our society is very unequal, right? We have to recognize that. The fact that we do have a law saying if you annoy the president, this and this will happen to you already tells you the sort of society that we're living in, right? We don't have rights if one man can decide and say, yes, I say one man because those, right, the parliament cannot just wake up one day and say, oh yeah, we're going to put together, right, laws or pass a bill that says do not piss off the president, right?
Okay, fair enough. Let me go to Lawel. Dennis, sorry. Let's first explore the legal framework in this. And now that we are already in the legal boat, let's just sail through. Lawel, what's your own view, the legal framework and the legal background
Okay. So first of all, I
around
think,
human rights?
yes.
So sorry, around digital rights rather. Sorry.
Yes, thank you so much. So I think that we must recognize that the world has shifted and that there is a new existing space where we all interact, unlike in the contemporary where it used to be more physical interaction.
Sure.
And that therefore we must be able to come up with laws that regulate how we interact on that space or how, check these developments, because everything needs to be regulated for society to be stable even in that space.
Yeah.
So we could have those laws, questioning to what amending or how we view like laws on privacy. To what extent, for example, can the people in charge, like the police, investigative departments, access how I interact with people on my phone? There are particular, for example, patient-doctor conversations or lawyer-client that are supposed to be privileged. So to what extent can they access those conversations vis-a-vis the privacy rights, right? But going into the conversation about, these laws, I think it is important for us to understand where these laws of, for example, freedom of speech stem from. The idea, the libertarian arguments of, I own myself, and I should be able to choose what I do with myself, of course, to the extent that it does not harm another person. So I think the challenge we have is where do we draw that line in this new interaction? But Scovia cautions us very well. As we make these laws, to whose benefit are they? Because most times we forget that these laws are supposed to be for the benefit of the society, and that even the leaders we choose are supposed to work in our interest. That we cannot make laws which seek to gag us against those who we put in charge of us. I don't know if you get, and that's why she keeps on talking about the idea of who are these laws made for. You get? So we cannot be making these laws to to say that you're protecting the person we choose to lead us, that we are annoying him and all that. And when you continue insisting on the idea that we must follow the law, but there is this thing of there's a difference between rule of law and rule by law. That individuals use the law to extend their individual interests or their political interests at the expense of the population. That the modern day dictators perhaps don't come and just beat you, that they want to have a justification. So they will use that law to make sure they hold you at ransom. They suffocate your freedom of speech. So as we, of course, agree that there must be regulation on how we interact in these spaces, we must care about protection of our rights. So when someone argues and says, why should there be a law to say that you cannot make the president angry, but somehow it is okay for you to annoy Rt.Hon Kidega, right? So you find it ridiculous for you to take me to court because I've annoyed you, but you think it's okay for president. But also the other argument, we must agree that when you go into the business of politics and serving the public, you cannot afford to be angry, because you're in the business of people dissenting, and how I dissent varies. It could be how I express myself, and therefore there cannot be such a law as ambiguous as annoying the person of the president. To what for example, now let me ask you about that law. What annoys the president? It could be a lot of things, right? What is the threshold that must be met? And a law cannot be made based on feelings, because with hate speech you're able to understand, measure by in terms of when you say this, these are the consequences. Perhaps in our fragile environment where we have a bad history, So there's a possibility that you can measure what amounts to hate speech or sectarian language. But issues to do with annoying the person of president is a very authoritarian law, very autocratic, and for me, it has no space in a democratic society where people are supposed to have their freedoms. Because my dissent, especially politically, could be as bad. And for me to express how bad it is, I do not know how I don't get to annoy you. Right, you get. So I think that perhaps these arguments, when we advance them here, they would say we are being ideal, right? Because the reality on ground is that the president seems to be annoyed by free speech itself.
To add on to that, just a quick
you guys, I need to bring Comrade Denis into the conversation.
One quick thing.
Yeah,
I think one of the things that me and Lawel are arguing is that if we look around our society, Uganda, we've realized that the government has actually taken advantage of this. By the government, I mean the person of the president and those that enable him have taken advantage of these democratic institutions, right? Institutions that are supposed to work for us, everybody in Uganda, and use that for their own personal gains to kind of advance their own personal interests. And therefore, us as Ugandans, if we keep using, we are supposed to, one way or the other, as quote unquote, a democratic country, supposed to hold our leaders accountable in whatever means, right, necessary. And so if you're telling me that if I critique you in the most simplest sense, then I'm annoying you, then there's no democratic accountability, right? I am not able to hold these elected officials accountable for their own actions towards the people if they keep gagging us by implementing laws like annoying the person of the president. That does not even make sense.
Okay, but just my own opinion about this. Lawel, me and you and all of us here will agree that many things begin and fall on leadership, right? I think that much we agree. That once you have a leader who is in charge, a leader who has, a benevolent leader, the country will by all means progress. But there is something that Kenneth Waltz described as psychobiography, that the psychodynamics around a leader influences decision making. Okay, that you need the person of the president or the office bearer to be in the best state of mind to make decisions for the country. So this, and psychobiography means that his environment, the factors around him, okay? So isn't it important to protect such a person whose decisions can take a country to war, whose decisions, if made under duress or under stress, can take the country, can lead the country to war, So is it fair for us to say that there is need to protect the office bearer so that by all, at any stage, they are in the best state of mind to make decisions for the country? And this is just my own...
Are we trusting that person to lead and govern us if he can easily be offended and not make right decisions based on my own communication?
No, this is just to trigger you to think about something.
Kidega, what you're only telling us is how we have degenerated in terms of civic awareness as a country. You cannot be expecting us to say we are going to tailor our freedoms and our constitutions around someone's lack of capacity. You get that idea that the president is getting perhaps old, or this is what triggers him, and therefore the constitution around should change. The solution then is to have him out and have someone who operates in a space that allows people enjoy their freedoms. You cannot say that we change the legal regime to suit a particular individual.
Okay, fair enough. No.
Wait, hold on.
Dennis.
I just want to back up just briefly, and then I largely agree with what these two are saying. However, I would not say we should remove him because he cannot have the capacity to. The definition of a leader by itself, especially when you are holding such high position, whether you're a man or a woman, you should be ready to be critiqued. That is definite. There is a common parable of a monkey in a zoo. I'll take this now to the lowest level of understanding. A monkey reaches out to get a banana up on top of a tree, and tourists are looking at this monkey. The higher it goes to reach up to get its banana, it's being exposed. So that is how leadership is in this country. Wait, hold on. So by the time you are holding the highest position in the land, you have reached and you've attained your goal. So you should be ready for any amount of criticism, whether it's positive or negative, and expect it. When you look at when you look at other jurisdictions, when you look at the way they were grilling, for example, in today's world, they're grilling Putin for invading Ukraine. They're greeting Boris Johnson for having that party during COVID. Barack Obama, Joe Biden, every day I turn on CNN or Sky News, I'm seeing these guys being grilled. But that does not affect them. They still go into the White House or their offices and they still decide things. Yeah, because the moment Moses, you're a leader, I'm sure you faced a lot of criticism, but that has never affected you making or coming up with a law which is going to back. So
you see,
it should be
Terry and comrades. My concern or my argument is that leaders are also human beings. They have emotions, they have feelings. So it is also naive for us to assume that they are immortal, that they are mortal, that we can say anything and then they won't be moved. Okay? Let's look at Jesus. Jesus was annoyed by people who were doing business in church. He went there and just destroyed their property.
That you're right.
He got angry, but he was a leader. A divine leader, if we are to say. But he got angry and went and did that. So I think for us to assume that leaders don't have emotions.
And that's exactly why we can't tailor the law, because the emotions of individuals are ambiguous.
And that's why I said, is there a need to amend the law?
You don't amend the law based on an individual's emotions or capacity to be angry at something. And she would believe, because we are both have an element of understanding psychology. That you cannot change the constitution based on an individual. It is like having a constitution around weather. The weather changes. So the constitution must be to the extent that people who it is made in the interest of are able to enjoy it. So what you're doing is that to say that the emotions of the president, or perhaps what pisses him off, it should determine what our interests are as a population for which the constitution exists. I don't know if you get that argument.
Fair enough. I won't ask any further. Comrade Denis, let's come to you. And these guys have consumed almost 30 minutes of our time. But from the student perspective, the aspect around digital rights, I know for sure that because of COVID-19, many institutions of learning went into online classes and online examination. To what extent was this a success? But also, did the students really benefit from their rights to access digital platforms? Were platforms like Facebook being used to administer lectures, okay? Or you only stuck to the commonly known Zoom or Google Meet and things like that? So the analysis of the success of these digital platforms from the student perspective, that's your own view. But also feel free to comment about what was going on earlier.
Wow, thank you very much, Comrade Kidega. First and foremost, I want to thank my comrades here. I've had a very nice debate. I've loved it. I've learned a lot. Personally, being that I'm not a law scholar, I may not indulge so much into the policies, laws, and so forth. But the digital rights, as far as students are concerned, I believe the COVID-19 pandemic has awakened us and our government at large. However, when government came up with the different spaces of how to see that students remain being in class or they remain being taught, we faced a number of challenges. For instance, Zoom came, yes, a number of schools adopted Zooming, but it has not been so that effective. Move to the remote areas, far deep in Bududa, Amolata, Kaperebyo.
Oh, Gulu, where I come from.
Gulu is not so that remote.
Gulu district.
Your network is a little bit stable. So some of these spaces have not been so that effective. So you realize that we had a gap. Some students were still continuing with the studies, but while the rest are missing. So we really, as student leaders, want to call upon government, because after even the pandemic, in the new normal, most of the institutions have still insisted on the e-learning, e-examining, hear of mobs, of recent they were striking, of missing, So I want to call upon government, one, to come up with policies, to come up with digital spaces that can reach out to all areas of the country such that all students benefit equally. I want to take an example, going back to the issues of freedom of speech and so forth. During the campaign period, we had a number of digital spaces being scrapped off by government. And at the end of the day, because of some people who are misusing these spaces, platforms, and it affected all of us. Right now, as I speak, Facebook is still down.
Closed. Yeah.
Of which this very Facebook, some of the students have been using it to interact with colleagues, research, and so forth. But as of now, you cannot access Facebook. What has government done about it? Can we come up with some policies? Let's say that if an individual, like let's say I, Denis, misuse maybe these digital spaces, can I be taken on as an individual? And we want to have measures that are quite not so that pressing to again to a common young person down there. Can we come up with policies like, let's say, you misuse Facebook as Denis, can you be taken on as
an
Denis,
individual?
as an individual? Like, for instance, can we say UCC regulate if Kidega is misusing Facebook? Can he be blocked, maybe, as an individual, and let the space running for other people to utilize it?
Yeah, but Dennis, just to speak on that, because that is a question of whether, as a country, we have the technological infrastructure. Because I was watching Parliament investigate the case of Zake, and the UCC official came to Parliament and said that we cannot trace where this tweet came from. So it either looks like we lack the technological infrastructure to actually do what you're proposing. That how can we follow these individuals to the dot and know that Kidega Moses is liable for this tweet and for this cyber crime or cyber offense? But it looks like our technology is still, lacking. It is still aloof. So maybe that could be, yes, a good proposal, but speaking to the current technology as we stand as a country, it might not be very, very possible. But my second question, just 1 second. My question to you, the second one is around, because you are speaking about proposals that government needs to bring in place. And I don't know, maybe you can confirm or, or do otherwise. The proposal that school-going children should have access to their mobile phones in school. How true is this? Is the Ministry of Education actually proposing this, that schools can have, freedom to have students hold their mobile phones in school, maybe during a given period of time? How true or how false is this? But also, are these some of the proposals that are, enshrined towards building a technologically competent generation? So, what's your take on that?
Well, that is very okay. Personally, I want to say that the issue of the ministry coming up to say that they allow students access mobile phones, I think it is very okay. But how effective is it? How is it going to help all students? Or it is?
Will it distract the learning?
Not as much, for as long as it is regulated by the schools and institutions. Regulate, let's say, allow students access phones, but it shouldn't be full time. Like, for instance, you're in class and the student is busy WhatsApping or Facebooking. What are you going to learn? There is a lecture going on for you on your smartphone. You're not even utilizing it on things that are benefiting your academics.
What if he's doing research?
Yes.
What if he's doing corresponding research to the lecture?
To the lecture. Maybe you cannot tell, of course. But let's them be allowed access phones. And two, can't government, for instance, come up and let's say supply smartphones to students countrywide? Because you are allowing students, like if a section, like let's say 20% of them can access these phones or can own these smartphones. Majority of our students don't have smartphones. They don't know even how to operate these gadgets.
Okay, fair enough. Comrade Terry, let me come to you. And Denis brings in quite an important aspect, the aspect of being strictly liable. The lawyers have addressed your mind to strict liability and vicarious liability. But the argument here is the strict liability, that as an individual, you must be accountable for your actions. And Denis is saying that, why can't UCC have regulations or, frameworks that indict or that follow up where these cyber offenses are actually coming from, and go as far as identifying the device where it came from and tracing it to the actual holder of that device? I think maybe this is a good proposal, but I'm looking at the proposal versus the gap that exists in this country, the technological gap and infrastructure. Because things like internet penetration is still very low. And now we are saying that UCC should have the capacity to know where a tweet came from. Aren't you asking for too much?
Yes. I believe so. First of all of this originates from the fact that as Uganda, we are still a young country. We are still quite behind technologically. This kind of technology or social media hit us just like a bomb. For the few of us on this panel who are educated, we know how to operate a smartphone. We know what to use it for. We know what to say on social media. Majority of other people, let's say someone who works in Chukubo or someone who is not as learned as some of us here, may think that expressing their opinions just like that, without any sieve or without thinking about it twice, is okay. So I think the problem was first, even before UCC tries to track where this tweet has come from, where this Facebook has come from, where this WhatsApp message has come from, we should first work on sensitizing the masses about these social media platforms. How do you use them? What's their use? What do you need to say on social media? Also educate them about their rights, educate them about the right of free speech vis-a-vis the public opinion and everything. So we first need to sensitize the public, and by doing this, we need to also spend some money, government resources, send some people to countries abroad and see how they have used their social media platforms. Then we can come back with an informed and exposed mindset. Now, that's the first measure I would advise government to take. The second one is that, first of all, before we even employ UCC to go and track where this tweet is coming from, I'd like us to go back to when COVID-19 had come up. That was when there was a massive spike and explosion on social media. Everyone was using social media because we were locked inside. So we all heard of this fight between this woman, Tina Fierce, and Sheila Gashumba, the whole cyberbullying kind of thing. Tina Fierce, I'm just giving her as an example. She was on Spark, I think. She was on Spark, so she was removed of Spark because of her different opinions about certain people. But I would also agree with why they removed her, because she was doing it in such a way that she was misusing her right to express her views. Now, Tina Fierce went onto YouTube. She actually has a YouTube channel there. Now, you cannot go and regulate Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Why? Because these are not in the jurisdiction of Uganda. That is why UCC and Ministry of ICT has not been able to penetrate where, for example, someone in Kitgum has sent a nasty tweet against the president, or maybe at the prime minister, or anyone, maybe any other public figure.
Anonymous. Okay.
The most you can do is track their SIM card or their smartphone and maybe block it from there. But they can use VPNs. People are using VPNs to access Facebook since it was cut down. So,
and VPN, for the benefit of our viewers, can put your location. For example, you access VPN and then it shows you that you are in Britain or you're in Germany. So if government is to trace where your Facebook post has come from,
they'll trace you in Michigan, USA.
Michigan or USA. So
because that's where the servers are, but they'll not trace you in Tinda, Kampala, Uganda. So the first thing is to sensitize the masses. How do you use social media? Must use it for the right reason. Why should you abuse someone? Why can't you express more constructive opinions? Then for us to have an informed and exposed decision, send them to countries abroad, the US, the UK. See, they're not perfect, but see how they're using their platforms. Come and employ it here. Use different sensitization methods, including our psychologists here, who can tailor these kind of methods to have people use social media the right way. But most of all, it's very difficult to track someone's smartphone to try and see if maybe Tina Fierce is using her YouTube channel. Then how are you going to try and track her and stop her from using YouTube? It's an American online platform. So you will have to send all sorts of petitions to YouTube or Google International to try and stop. So it's a far cry. So our best measure is to sensitize the public.
Sure. Thank you. Lawel, I'll come to you. Scovia, clearly your hand is up.
Yes.
But I'll give you a chance to put that banding issue forth. But also my question to you is around digitalization and security. Okay? And the question is that let's go back to our social lives, how we live our lives. Today, many of our young people, each time they go to maybe Javas, they take a picture and post. I'm at Javas right now. They go to any other place, they take a picture and post. And at the end of the day, we are giving so much information out there. You go to Facebook and they ask you for almost literally your entire life, your hobby. So we're giving so much information. You go to all these digital platforms. So the aspect of security comes in, and this should worry us in that the kind of information we give platforms like Facebook, for example, is worrying to me as a person. Okay? And let's look at things like Safe Border or even all these Uber things. Safe Border literally knows where, I mean, someone who picks you from home knows that, oh, this person lives here and they go to work every day. You know, your route is literally being stored in the Safe Border, cache data. So shouldn't this worry us that, yes, it is good to digitalize and these platforms are okay, but there seems to be a cost which is security sensitive. We know that, for example, Facebook had a legal case, okay, because they were accused for mining data, for selling people's data to different bidders, and I think the case is still now in court up to now. So, do you think the aspect of digitalization at some point exposes us to security threats?
Right, actually,
Then also
before
your concern.
yeah, before you like my response was going to be on basically surveillance, right? Some of these recommendations that you're making, the sort of powers that you want to give UCC, right, would be literally to surveil us as Ugandans and everything that we do. And that means that they have access to certain, right, data, privacy information that we might not be willing to part with. But at the same time, for lack of a better example, right, platforms like Facebook and Twitter, YouTube, they do have their own rules, right? That if you violate them, right, and then they can take action against you, either kick you off or suspend you, whatever, whatever. And so the fact that we as Ugandans, right, really, really, really do that's why I'm saying we live in a state an authoritarian state that really structures our thinking. That the first response to someone violating right someone else's rights on Facebook or Twitter is, oh yeah, no, jail them, right? What does the law have to say when these platforms already have their own inbuilt rules that you can literally report someone's tweet, right? It might not be that effective, right? That is something that they have to work on, but they do have those measures already. When it comes to data and security, we've seen right, Facebook in particular has been going through a lot of legal issues, accusations of Facebook using people's data to basically meddle in elections, to actually, right, fuel genocides in places like Rohingya and even Ethiopia, right? And so it is, right, quite worrying that an entity like Facebook, right, it's a non-government organization. It should not really, right, be able to have that much political power to the extent that, right, people use it to fuel literal genocides. But here we are, pretty much, right, okay, or very ambivalent to some of the things that, they use our data for. For example, if Facebook is able to know that, oh, Scovia is from Pakwach and therefore she is affiliated or she is part of, right, the Jonam group. And so if I continuously bring her information on, right, the Jonam and then again, giving her very negative information on the Waganda because Scovia probably hates the Waganda because she's from the north and there's that, right? And then, right, kind of fueling those social in-group, out-group biases that then, to an extent, right, lead to sort of, right, effects that we're seeing in, again, places like Ethiopia and Rohingya, then we have to be very careful about, what we see the role of those entities as, what we see the role of those entities as in our societies and how we can regulate them. I'm not saying we should ban them like Uganda did during, right, and up to today, right, during the election time, we banned or had a whole internet shutdown where there was literally no access to information. Some of us that were outside of the country couldn't even contact our family members because if my grandfather, who is deep in Pakwach, does not know how to use VPN, then I'm not going to be able to contact him during that period of time when there's internet shutdown. But at the same time, we do realize that those entities are not perfect and they are using our information for, right, to do different things that we might not be aware of, and therefore there should be ways that we can hold them accountable. And I know that different governments, especially at least the European Union has, put in place more stringent measures to hold Facebook accountable than, let's say, the lax laws in the US. And so our governments can actually, sue, entities like Facebook, even though, we see them as, oh my God, they're untouchable, but they are touchable if we do take the legal measures.
Yeah, fair enough. Denis, just 1 second. Lawel, let me draw your mind into something. And Scovia has led me to this. The aspect of jurisdiction, okay? I know for sure that countries have jurisdiction both nationally and internationally. For example, the Embassy of Uganda in America is Uganda jurisdiction, okay? We have territory over that particular portion of land in America.
Deemed Ugandan soil.
Yes, yes, something like that. So the aspect of jurisdiction and the aspect of prosecution. And to this, I'll take you to, I think, Section 4 of the Penal Code Act, subsection 3, which mentions about if a crime is committed either wholly or partially in a given jurisdiction, then a country can, has the right to prosecute, okay? So now, the aspect of jurisdiction, let's look at the example of Lumbuye. Lumbuye was in Turkey when he, went on social media and then said all these things, okay? I would not assume that he committed an offense by the Ugandan law, okay? But I don't think Turkey and its laws really impede or bar some of these things that Lumbuye was doing. And therefore, Turkey maybe had no interest in prosecuting Lumbuye, okay? Because what Lumbuye might have done might not even be contrary to their laws, but contrary to the laws of Uganda. So isn't there a gray area between the jurisdiction that countries can implement their prosecutions versus the international laws that should be able to create a reconciling point of view?
Maybe senior counsel will guide me better, but I'm sure there are also laws about citizens of Uganda committing crimes against the state, especially things to do with terrorism and those crimes against the nation. So I think then they would still have a jurisdiction as Uganda to deal with that instance. But me, what I want to address myself about largely is that I do not want us here to treat the social media and the internet as if it is an exclusive and special place. I think if we are saying that we are going to educate people about the use of social media, it should not be about social media, it should be about the laws of the country. People should know the law, because social media's behavior should not be different from how we interact. The difference is that I can interact physically here, and here I'm interacting in the space, right? So if someone conducts themselves in Chikowa in a certain way, they're expected to conduct themselves in the same way on social media. It's about expression, right? So we should not make it seem as though we have maybe an elitist space where there's a particular special of conduct that is expected of you. I think for me it is about people should be able to express themselves in any way they want, whether in person or on social media. But of course there are laws in place that apply generally, that you're not supposed, for example, to hack someone or to spread hate speech. Because even in person, if you went on a rally and uttered sectarian language or hate speech about a particular minority group, you would still be prosecuted. It's the same thing with social media. So I think people should be able to express themselves however way they want on social media, as long as it is within the larger confines of the law. But also secondly, I celebrate the fact that we have no capacity by the UCC to know that Lawel posted this. One, first of all, the people who design these systems actually do that intentionally to encrypt, for example, governments or other individuals from accessing my privacy. And that is why not any person can access my WhatsApp chat with someone. The system is designed that way.
It's end-to-end encryption.
Yes. Yeah. So it's not largely about our capacity as a poor state. It's about the system's design. But also I think that somehow it protects us, because I would imagine if UCC had capacity to track down everyone who says these things, especially in a regime like ours. So I feel that Zake is protected better with government not proving that it is his account. I feel that maybe Stella or any person who says things that don't rub the government well, is protected. For example, away from the law and courts, you understand that these days we have safe houses. For example, I don't know what informs them, but my thinking is that because they know they don't have standing in court, so they will punish you outside the court system. They will take you to a safe house, cane you, and release you. You get. So it doesn't matter whether it's not a matter of proof. So somehow, if there is any threat that makes it impossible for them to track down someone, that's the only protection they have. So for me, I think even that lack of capacity is what protects us, given that our population has been largely disempowered. You see, when we are starting this conversation, you're asking about the law, conformity. And as we discuss this, for me, I think we must move beyond the legal structure we have, because the population is not empowered to own that structure. You look at how the laws are made, it's a matter of figures and numbers, who has the majority, and like she tells you, the numbers are more loyal to the person of the president and government, NRM establishment, than they are loyal to their people. And that the laws we have are a reflection of the interests of the president and less about the interests of the people. And that you know that for sure, if we were to have a referendum on most of these things, we would have it otherwise. The reason why we don't have referendums is because countries can't be going referendums about every other law. So the members of parliament do it on our interest.
Yes.
But like I've told you, if people were to vote on these laws, they wouldn't go through. So now they go through because we have a parliament which is corrupted, not corrupted, but it itself does not think. Individual MPs don't think they can exist without the president. They think they have no chances of election if they defy and stand with their people. So what I'm trying to say is that we must move ahead of the discussion of this is what the law says, this is what parliament has passed, and move to the objective, to understanding the foundations of these laws. What are they supposed to be for in the first place? If we are discussing freedom of speech, yes, it must be regulated, but to what extent are people protected to say what they want to say?
So is that leading us to say that there is need to revise the process through which policies are made in this country? Because one thing I know for sure is that the policy formulation process has an involvement of the general public. Okay, so by the time a policy comes in place, the public has been involved. So unless you're saying that this process needs to be revisited and needs to be reviewed, but if not, then the process is clear.
But Kidega, let us be honest ourselves.
So we can discuss the actual implementation of these processes and how effective they are.
Let's be honest ourselves.
Yeah.
There are few of us in the members of public who debated the public order management bill, this law, the cyber security law. How many of us really participated? But I think for me, we cannot change the system because the democratic setting is such that parliament, on behalf of people, makes laws. I think the only solution we have is the long run, which is promoting civic awareness, so that people can be able to ask these right questions, somehow be able to hold these MPs accountable. I don't know to what extent, but it is better we can ask these questions than in the status quo, where we are not even empowered civically to ask these questions.
Yeah, because the law stipulates how when referendums should be held.
Yes.
Not for all provisions of the law. They are specific.
Yes, I said it in terms of if people were to choose.
So to create a policy that regulates the digital space might not need a referendum.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
You see?
Yes.
So unless we go and amend the constitution to say that whatever policy needs to be made,
what I'm saying,
go for a referendum. Sorry.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, no.
But what I'm trying to say is that these laws are yes passed legally as provided for by members of parliament. But if we were to take them through the people themselves to vote themselves, you would perhaps have a different result. But of course, the legalities say that parliament, of course, does it on behalf of us. We cannot have people voting on every...
So are you saying that parliament is a misrepresentation of the people?
Yes, it's not a direct representation of what of our say about these things.
So it's a misrepresentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I add
It's
something?
it's a correct representation of the interest of the person of the president.
Let me add
Okay,
something to
fair
that. Lawel started by saying that, right, like, we have created these elite spaces that the Omuntua ones cannot even reach. First and foremost, how many of our parliamentarians actually go back to their constituents when a law or a bill is being discussed, right? People have no access to these parliamentarians except for, maybe during funerals or someone is sick and someone needs, right? That is literally the job that our parliamentarians see themselves doing, not necessarily, I am going to go to my constituents and we're going to have a discussion on how a particular bill actually will affect them, right? But this whole, as Lawel says, like the policy formulation process has been captured by elite interests, and particularly the regime interests, because all our laws are one way or the other benefiting a certain individual and those that enable him.
But aren't those the outcomes of multi-party dispensation? Ugandans wanted a multi-party dispensation
Examine how that
in
is
2005.
examine how it manifests now.
So Ugandans agitated and clamored that we want multi-party dispensation. Here it is. So it comes with its, setbacks. It is partisan.
Multi-party dispensation.
Do you expect the NRM to advance the interests of the opposition?
The NRM advancing the interests of the opposition. They should
advance the interests of the people.
Is it about the NRM and opposition, or the NRM and the people? So why is it that the interests of the people are not the interests of the NRM? When did we create such an elitist government where the people's interests are nowhere near being represented, except for the interests of those who are part of the NRM government? Because they will tell you, if you are not affiliated with the NRM, you will not be able to enter certain offices. You will not be able to do certain things.
And unfortunately, there is no one to create the balance for the panel. So it's a one-way street. But I want to take those as mere allegations. And not proven ones.
As personal opinions.
For the benefit.
Yes,
and personal
opinions. Yes.
Yeah. But let's move to Denis. Denis, you had a concern earlier on. Your hand was up. But also, the one thing for sure is that you're the only one with an economic or business background, compared to many of us. Most of us did economics at A level. When we came higher, we abandoned that. But the aspect of digitalization and the economy, we are trying to create that kind of relationship and understand it. We know for sure that ever since Facebook was closed, young people who were running their businesses online, using Facebook to sell their, the girls who sell their cosmetics on Facebook, the boys who sell their phones and market it on Facebook, really took a back step regarding their economic advantage. And a country like Uganda, where the unemployment levels are very high, you would imagine that government would try to create as many alternatives as possible. One of which being the digital platforms. But instead, it looks like the government is not very sensitive towards the economic empowerment of young people. So let's speak about digital platforms and the economy, but also you had your hand up.
Yeah. Wow, thank you very much. To the business perspective, as you've stated it clearly, most of the young people used to do marketing, advertise their goods via some of these spaces, of which some of these spaces are now not accessible because of a selected individual's interests. Because I believe, as we are debating here, I want us to have it in mind that we are all humans, and even the person of the president is a human being. So I believe he also gets annoyed at times. Though he's a leader, he has to be tolerant. That is understandable. Some of us, we are also leaders. Not everyone will always speak good about us, but it depends to what level has it gone. My view is, how would you feel, for instance, I woke up one morning and just start insulting you? Like, for instance, Lawel, how is it Lawel?
Lawel.
I'll feel bad.
Lawel. Automatically, you will feel bad. You haven't done anything bad to me or negative to me, but I start insulting you, abusing you. Lawel,
ask her the same question.
And automatically, similarly, all of them. So I want us to try to understand that even when we are expressing our freedom of speech, please, let's have it in mind that we don't offend others. Let's keep in our lines. Let's debate as intellectuals. And then the issue of sensitizing, I would agree with that 100%. We need the government has to take that objective of sensitizing the communities on how to use these different social media or digital spaces for the right causes. Because these digital spaces primarily were created or were developed by these different developers to communicate, is communications. The issues of having, again, the education sector also coming in, these issues are just coming in of recent. But the primary objective was communication. So my concern also before that, my concern was, if at all UCC can't have the capacity to trace where some tweets come from, where some Facebook comments come from. Can't we develop our own spaces? Like, for instance, I'll give an example in China regarding Facebook. China, they don't use Facebook. They developed their own media space that is quite similar to Facebook, and Chinese are using it to communicate. It can easily be regulated by the Chinese government. Can't we have it in Uganda? Can't we empower our scholars here? I believe we have young people who can develop. If at all they are equipped with the necessary gadgets.
That cannot be discussed without understanding the general culture of China. The Communist Party and all that. Because they regulate, even newspapers, they regulate the information people receive. So if we are they have a direct interest to also regulate how they interact. And
that's what I'm saying. Like, we're literally asking for a surveillance state, right? A state that will surveil each and every movement of yours to the extent that it will erode some of the rights and freedoms that we're talking about here.
So, guys, we are in Denis's time.
Something very small. So imagine a world where, for example, Uganda says you're closing all private televisions and you're only supposed to receive information from UBC. And we know how hard it is for example, individuals of descent to have airtime or to interact with UBC. So what we are saying is that we should give the state monopoly on regulation of our interaction. And I fear there's going to be a lot of regulation on how we interact.
Okay. Denis, do you want to finish up?
So mine simply was, if China has done this, I want us to look at our country and China. How worse or how better is China doing? If at all they are having it in place, can't we benchmark from them and we also have it in our country? I believe it would be better.
I think that is food for thought. It's a good way to look at this.
Because still, whether we say what, blah, blah, China is still doing far better than our country.
Yeah, they are a big world economy. That's very true. They influence the global trade to a very great extent. So maybe we should look at what exactly do you want to achieve. Is our right to accessing digital platforms more important than our right to economic empowerment? Maybe that's a question that we shall begin with in a second phase. Otherwise, that takes us for a short commercial break, and thank you for keeping it the Youth Roundtable. Feel free to put your comments on the comment section. Let us know what you think. If you agree with the views of any of the panelists, please put the comment on the comment section. If you disagree, please go ahead and let us know and put an alternative opinion. Thank you. Let's go for a short commercial break. We shall be back shortly. Many thanks for keeping it the Youth Roundtable, and we hope that you are enjoying our conversation. Without wasting any more time, I will dive straight and begin from where we had ended. And Lawel, let me pick it up from you. Just to substantiate your argument earlier on about China and trying to explain the people of China and how they govern themselves. China is one of the few countries in the world that is a nation state. Uganda is a multi-nation state. There are many nations within the same country. Now, China, to the other side, is actually a nation state, in that about 90% of its people are homogeneously of the same culture and same beliefs and speak the same language. They have a common understanding about, what economic direction we should take. Their organization seems to be, synchronized, organically. Unlike us as a country, where we have all these colonial borders that, put us together as a country, we are different in so many ways. And therefore, your argument is quite valid that, such policies would thrive in China because of certain values and certain principles that go back to how they are established. And I think it's a fair argument. But also, Denis has a good proposal that, well, we could look at, building, because his proposal achieves two things. One, it builds our innovation capacity as a country. But two, it solves the problem of us relying on things like Facebook for our domestic affairs. And really, that's a discussion for another day. But just to pick it up from where we had ended, and Lawel, your own perspective on this, the aspect of digital rights, it looks like to me, it is a gray area. And I don't know what to think, but I think it is a gray area because look at it from the term of journalism and propaganda, if I'm to call it, that we have these platforms that they are being misused. Look at someone who comes to Twitter and then announces a president dead, or comes to Twitter and puts up miscommunication and misleads the public. Now, where does the state come in to regulate? Because this miscommunication, one way or another, affects the people, which people are the state has a mandate to protect. So where is the thin line? How do we draw that common line?
Kidega, look, there is nothing, for example, you've said that I think is not catered for within our laws. I think social media, just like you go on a radio station, there are particular laws that apply on what is not acceptable and what it is. I think we have already had a lot of regulation in that line. I don't know why all of us somehow, with everything, want to find a way of putting new law to as much not achieve anything very special apart from the idea that you continue to put stringent things on people's freedom of expression. There is that case of Onyango, Bo, Andrew Mwenda, where the judgment is very clear in regulating communication, newspapers, radio stations, about what amounts to what kind of, for example, information you put there is acceptable. It protects journalists on what they can write and what they cannot. It somehow says that accept them. They can even what is the false news, at what extent can you be held by law, etc. But also we have laws that regulate these spaces on what you can say on radio and not. So I do not think that we need new laws like this law by the Muhammad Sereko proposed amendment. We already have laws to regulate speech already. I think my fear is that we continue to find a way of suffocating dissent and free speech. I hear you when you say that there is need for us to have laws that regulate these new technological advancements because, again, I think there are areas that need to be protected, like privacy, etc. But just respond to you on the idea of China. I think you already drew a good analysis. Maybe just respond to Uganda's case. I think that we do not have anything that blurs anyone or stops anyone in Uganda from coming up with a social media chart of their own. That's actually a version of what they said was Ugandan. I think we're already in a capitalist, semi-capitalistic or mixed economy where people are allowed to come up with all these ventures. I think it is okay. Government can go ahead and expand its innovation fund so that people can be able to take advantage and advance technologically. But I think it also goes back to, is our country willing to go there? Because we are having economic challenges, we have a very huge population, and yet we know that a digital space is good for us as an economy, but then we make it very hard for this large group of the youth to access internet. There was a proposal by Honorable Frank Muhwezi when we were still, I think, Minister of IT and Information, to have free internet access in Kampala Metropolitan. That has since been reversed, and now we actually have tax on access of internet. So government seems also not to be doing well for him, who is encouraging innovation and inclusivity of the youth in the digital economy. So the best thing to do is government to find a way of making it easier for people to access internet so that they can be able to put their commodities there, that they can be able to innovate. Unfortunately, we seem to prioritize government's shrinking of democracy at the expense of the economy, because you cannot switch off, you cannot impose a tax because people are making rugambo, people are making noise. Like, how do you put in place something that makes it hard for the youth to access internet because you're tired of noise? That personalization of national issues. So I think we must make a trade-off. People must be allowed to make their noise so that these people also can be able to take advantage of that space. So that is my assessment of the situation.
Okay, fair enough. Comrade Terry, I'll ask you a legal question because you're at least a senior counsel on this panel. The aspect of digital rights versus human rights. I know for sure that Article 44 clearly stipulates the non-derogable rights, and there are only four: the right to habeas corpus, the right to fair hearing, freedom from torture, and freedom from slavery or servitude. And there are only four. It looks like, digital rights are not anywhere mentioned in the non-derogable rights. So can we say with confidence that digital rights are actually human rights, or they are rights that the state can give you when they feel like, and when they don't feel like, they withdraw it back?
When they feel like. Okay, it's a good question. You brought up the issue of non-derogable rights. And first of all, for the viewers who don't understand what that is, that these are rights that are inherent and not granted by the state. In other words, these are given to you by virtue of you being born a human being. By virtue of your birth, you're given these rights. To answer your question, freedom of slavery, freedom from all the other things are very good. However, that's a very sensitive topic for another time.
Yeah.
But digital rights are enshrined under, for me, what I deem important rights.
Important.
Freedom of speech and expression. Once you take that away from a state, there is no state at all.
Okay.
I would like to tell you that in my legal opinion, there is no state at all. If we look at different jurisdictions which are much more mature than us in terms of judicious mindsets and legal capabilities,
Okay.
the US, the UK, Australia, they have all these sets of laws which actually empower the people to put the government into line. Checks and balances. What are you doing with our constitution?
Our resources.
Our resources. What kind of bills are you bringing up? If there's a referendum, why are we bringing it up? We need this law replaced. We need this amended. So digital rights, like I began my earlier example when we began this discussion, digital rights are enshrined under the freedom of speech. That's where they all originate from, to me, especially things concerning social media platforms. All the other things concerning innovation and what, they are secondary to the right to freedom of speech and expression. All these things of copyright, trademark, they all come in. Innovation is just this is just a ripple in the ripple effect from this. So I don't think that's something the government should just give and take whenever they want.
Okay.
To me, that's my personal opinion. I think the government and Ugandans in general need to accept that we are moving in an evolutionary world. Technology has been moving, especially since the World War time. And now we can't live in denial anymore. Technology is there. People are empowered. People are teaching themselves. Someone in Chikobo already knows how to operate a smartphone and give a tweet on Twitter. People are going for adult education. So the thing is not to regulate digital rights, it's actually to empower people. Sensitize them, tell them that this is good, this is bad. And there are also checks and balances like the Computer Misuse Act, there's offensive communication. So just express your ideas, like my comrade had said here, express your ideas as an intellectual.
Okay.
But the most important thing is that we should be able to accept that these rights are there.
Isn't that contrary to what she and him have been saying? That let's not make this an elitist thing. Like, let's not make these media platforms an elitist platform. So if we are encouraging intellectual conversations, we are making it an elite conversation. Because I don't think the hustler down there in
Now
Chikubo,
you're being elitist by assuming that the hustler in Chikubo cannot hold
okay.
intellectual conversations.
They can hold, but for us to assume that they can hold the same conversation with you who has gone, who is a PhD candidate. You know, your level of understanding, your knowledge, you've read way more than they have.
What I'm
Then
saying
it's up
is
to
that everyone
me
should be able to express themselves as long as it's within the laws of them.
And also the government since time immemorial has been fighting high illiteracy rates. So part of technological advancement is part of literacy. Because the hustler in Chikobo, we don't, as a state, we don't want to leave him there. We want all of us to be on the same footing in terms of at least basic understanding.
Yes.
So the moment we can empower someone deep in Mukono or deep in Jinja to also at least have a conversation with everyone else in the same kind. I don't give social media exclusivity. This was just a way of expressing ourselves on a mobile device, on a cyberspace.
I hear you.
And
they are more like our chimezas where we get on the round table and express ourselves freely. On that, this time it's being done through a mobile or remote platform.
And that's where my idea of sensitization came from. Because much as people in the US all speak English, or in Britain, they're not all educated. They might speak English, but they don't know how to put it down on paper. But at least they can understand these things in their mind.
No, I am one of those who don't believe that your ability to speak English should be a quantifier for your level of intellectualism. So
Can
I
I
hear
say
you.
something
Scovia, I'm
real
coming
quick?
to you. And
Let me just respond real quick, and then you can ask
All right,
your
all right.
question. I think talking about elitism and these spaces, I started off by saying that, right, like social media actually flattens the curve for a lot of us, right? The kind of gaps between, let's say, Omuntu Wawansi and a professor are pretty much, right, being
Narrowed
reduced.
down, yeah.
But the other thing is, right, talking about sensitization, right, and let's say the use of the English language, we see that in a lot of ways, right, we are borrowing these concepts, these words from, right, so many other societies that I don't even know how to explain digital privacy to like my people in the village who did not know how to speak English, right? There are no vernacular terms to kind of express or explain digital rights
Can't you
to
use
these
Alur?
people.
Can't you use Alur?
No, but it's like these specifications, right? If
Okay.
you're to go into like those deep details, like, oh, this is how you conduct yourself, these are your rights, these are, right, in this context of...
No,
in this,
but I'll tell you that I think as chapter 2 of the Constitution actually puts governments to task that they must translate these laws to, languages that are understandable by the local people.
have we?
So I think maybe that could be a shortcoming regarding the, the laws and how they're implemented. But the laws actually stipulate that these, laws should be translated to people.
Right, and
But
that's exactly what I'm getting at.
sure, fair enough. My question to you, finally, is that what Lawel said, trade-offs. That life is a give and take. We give you something, you give us something back in return. And let's go back to security. There was a time where in this country there were high levels of insecurity. High-profile citizens were being murdered, mysteriously, and then government decided to put CCTV cameras across the country. But then people like you are saying that this infringes on our privacy. We are being, this is surveillance. You want to monitor us all the time. So then what do you want? Because it's a give and take. There are high levels of insecurity. Government is saying, okay, let us put cameras everywhere. And you're saying, oh, no, please, don't surveil my life. Don't surveil my home. Then what should government do?
All right, so I think for me personally, we cannot have a conversation about digital rights in Uganda without really talking about the shrinking civil space, right? We have used so many of the laws that were implemented, like the Computer Misuse Act, to actually shrink the civil spaces in Uganda, to actually limit dissent. And when it comes to security, right, Uganda is not actually the first country to use, right, like a terrorism act or the guise of rights to actually infringe on people's rights. We saw that with the US after 9/11, right, when basically they had the Patriots Act that allowed the CIA to actually do whatever it could to get information from, right, people who were suspected of terrorism. And that's how we had people in Guantanamo Bay being tortured and all of that. And that's the same thing that's happening here, right? Because once you start saying that, ooh, right, you literally put out a tweet, right, that probably insulted the president, and then he called them safe houses, but they're not safe houses. We know those are torture chambers. You go in there, you cannot call it a safe house if people are being tortured in there, right? There's no safety there, right? And even then, right, yes, we do have a security issue where people, right, we had high-level government officials being shot down on our streets. But I think to say that, right, we need more surveillance. What has the surveillance that we've had done for us at this point in time? You find that, oh yeah, the CCTV cameras are not working, or they're ineffective, or we don't even have the street lights to actually enable us to get good images and things like that. And so what we are trying to do is literally just expand the reach of the government while at the same time limiting the rights of the people to dissent and to actually hold government officials accountable. Because
Summarize. Okay, thank you. Denis, let me come to you.
Yes, please.
Terry proposes we must, create civic awareness, and I think Lawel did concur with him. From the education perspective and from the student perspective, do you think there's need to review the curriculum to have maybe ICT introduced at a much more earlier level to the students, so that as they, transcend higher their academic, ladder, they are well acquainted with the areas around ICT, areas around how do I use my digital platform in a way that I don't infringe on the rights of others. Do you think there is need for us to review the curriculum so that we can have ICT being introduced much more earlier?
Yeah,
Because right now,
definitely.
as far as I know, it is not compulsory at any level. Is it compulsory at any level? No, it's not.
What?
ICT.
ICT.
You know, there's that option, ICT and
Or
submat.
yeah.
So it's more or less.
Yeah, so there is no level where it is actually compulsory. So do you think there is need for us to, given the fourth industrial revolution and the fifth is yet to come, maybe we should prepare ourselves?
That is very much okay. Definitely, I would concur with you. If at all, take for instance, if government changed the curriculum and we have ICT as a compulsory maybe subject from secondary school, such that a student right away from senior 1, you get translating to the next levels, knowing how to operate or how to conduct yourself when using the different digital spaces. By the time you cross to university, you'll be well equipped. You'll not be this kind of person like Comrade Lawel was suggesting that government should let people do their mongering and so forth. You wouldn't be that kind of person who would be just there to make your lugambo, but you're making developmental lugambo that is going to add value on you first as a person, as an individual, to the community where you're staying, and to your government. Sure. Not just making a lugambo of attacking people, attacking someone that you've even never met. No, I've never met Kidega, you're attacking him, saying all sorts of words against him, but you've never met him. Personally, you don't know him, you don't know how he looks.
Words that are demeaning to his dignity.
Yes. So I think it would be very good, and I want to urge the relevant stakeholders to please take it up. It is doable.
Oh, yeah, sure, fair enough. Colleagues, we need to conclude on this particular topic. I'm giving you 30 seconds, and I'll time my watch. So, Lawel, your last words regarding digital rights in Uganda.
So I just want to give an example of how phones came into play. That I would now not have to meet Kidega, I would have to give them a phone call and say whatever I want, right? I think to that level, we do not have a lot of regulations on how you must conduct yourself on a phone, right? The difference now here with social media is that now you have a bigger phone call, and you can type or you can use a voice note, right? So do we then also have, now we get to have this bigger conversation? I think that's as people can afford to do Lugambo on a phone call and these things, people should also be left to judge how they want on this space, as long as they are within the laws. But conclusively, I think that we all need these rights to be in place to regulate this gray area, but we should as much do it to the extent that it empowers the people, not those against the enjoyment of rights of the people. Yeah, that's what I can say.
Okay, I had a comment, but I will not put it. Yes, Terry, 30 seconds.
Yes, so for me, basically, it's that I'll just add on what he was saying, that these laws are in place for us to enjoy. Our rights are enshrined under the Constitution. And I think even if we have non-derogable rights, to me, I believe all our rights should be non-derogable. I believe we should be able to enjoy these rights as long as we live in this planet.
Not favor.
Yeah, and we should not have rights which are more important than others. I mean, they should be there, but in total, rights are rights. Yeah. Because if there's a right from freedom of torture, right, freedom of speech, all of them should be respected. When it comes to digital rights, I think they should be treated with the same kind of respect. Yeah. I think the fact that we're moving into the 5th industrial revolution, we should be able to accept that the digital space is there and it's not going anywhere. We should be able to enjoy these rights without walking on eggshells. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm pro not insulting anyone. Yeah. But if someone is bringing up facts on social media, especially if they cannot reach your office, as an MP, let's say they're in Busia and they've never interacted with the MP of Busia, they should be able to have an accountability of sorts. Yeah. So if you're putting up something constructive on Twitter or Facebook or anywhere, you come up with something, maybe a WhatsApp, those block messages, and it circulates around, you should be able to be constructive. It shouldn't be in a way that you're now attacking or abusing the MP, but rather asking him constructively, where are our this? Where you promised this? Where can we?
Decorum.
Ah, perfect. Yeah. Yes. So, yeah, digital rights should be enjoyed.
Yeah.
They should be inherent as well. That's what I also think, because it moves under freedom of expression. At the same time, if someone offends a public figure, the measures of torture should not be as extreme as we have seen in many different
in a marketplace.
Fair enough. This is the month of women, so I will give Scovia the last opportunity. Let me come to Denis. Denis, your 30 seconds.
While I'll stick on one thing, that yes, we have the rights, the freedom of speech, but may I just want us to have it in mind that as we are expressing our freedom of speech, let's not again infringe on other people's rights. Let's try to use the different digital spaces for constructive debates, constructive questions. That is okay. That is friendly. I think that is the best way to go.
Fair enough. Scovia, you have the last word on this topic.
Yeah, so to kind of echo some of what the other panelists have said, I think it's very important for us to actually, right, when we're having conversation about digital rights and civic space in Uganda, we have to really, really question, right, some of where these laws are coming from and whose interests they serve, because most of the time, the laws that restrict communication and dissent, where we have a lot of people actually wanting to hold government officials accountable, are meant to gag us from, right, conveying those sort of critiques to government officials. As I said, social media, the internet has kind of flattened that curve, or that divide between us, the regular people, and government issues. And so by taking away that ability to actually critique using these platforms, then you're making sure that only, right, one person's voice is heard, and that one person can be any elected leader who is deemed as uncriticable. I don't even know if that's a real word, but yeah.
Thank you. Fair enough. Comrades, let's spare just the next 5 to 10 minutes to talk about the late Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament, Honorable Jacob Oulanyah. It's only fair that we pay him tribute. It's only fair that the Youth Roundtable accords him some time. And it's a sad moment for us as a country. And I think on behalf of the Youth Roundtable and on my own behalf, I extend my sincere and heartfelt condolences to the people of Acholi, to the people of northern Uganda, but above all, to Ugandans in general. I think we have lost a gallant son of the soil, and it's sad. But well, just about his legacy, Comrade Lawel, I know that you're a mutualite, and so was the late Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament. What will you remember about him? What legacy will stick in your mind forever?
I think as mutual, we celebrate his life.
Oh, sure.
As mutual, and on behalf of mutualites, we pride in the idea that we have been able. Our pride is derived from our capacity to contribute to this nation.
Wow.
Mutual, at least in the history of Uganda, has been the whole that has produced all these guys. But at individual level, I also want to celebrate his life for what he has done for our country. I want us to celebrate his life, or even mourn as a nation. I'm uncomfortable with the regionalization of him as someone from Acholi and from the north. I wish we could just say all of us as Uganda are touched equally. But also, every time such things happen, as a young person, I reflect on my life and how I should be able to move in the years to come and what I want to be remembered for. Thank you so much.
Sure. Comrade Terry, the late was actually a lawyer like you are. What legacy will stick in your mind forever?
I followed the late Oulanyah, not an avid follower, but I followed him quite a bit. I like the fact that he used to break down the law in a very, very simplified manner. I like the fact that he used to look at things not just from a closed kind of narrow perspective, but he also used to put in his own opinion into things. Yeah, so now that's just my opinion as a lawyer. The fact that he had reached such a high position, especially using his qualifications as a lawyer, I think he did quite well as an officer of the court.
Yeah.
And as a normal, ordinary person, I like the fact that he was a free-spirited person. He used to ride his bike, like they've been showing him. He was a people's person.
Yeah.
I think it's not just about our profession, but I think even as someone can express themselves in their natural state, in who they are as a person, I think that's why many people have loved him so much, and the country mourns him.
Sure.
Yes.
Dennis,
please.
the late Right Honorable Speaker was actually an active student leader in his time. If you get to hear his stories, he was Guild Speaker of Makerere University,
President MLS.
President Makerere Law Society. So he was very active as a student leader. As a student leader of our time, what shall you remember from him?
Well, thank you so much. On my personal behalf and on behalf of the National Secretariat, that is the ONSA officers, and on behalf of the students fraternity of Uganda, we want to join the rest of the country to celebrate the late Right Honorable Jacob Oulanyah's life. And we send our sincere empathies to Mwaso, the people of Acholi sub-region. We have really lost a pillar in this country. And I want to say that one thing personally I remember about him, he has been a person who is down to earth. He's a pro-people leader. He's open-minded. He always speaks what he feels is right at any point of time. And he has been a person you can easily reach out to, and he responds. A couple of institutions, universities around the country have been approaching him to invite him for career guidance sessions. He has been responding, so I applaud him for that. Basically, that's what I will still remember about him. It's very rare to get leaders at that level who are pro-people. So he has been one of a kind.
Sure. Scovia, you have the last words as usual. The late Right Honorable was actually a very strong advocate for women empowerment. I recall some of his statements, let us empower the women, let's bring them to equal measure. What will you take home from the latest life?
I'll start by saying my sincere condolences to his family. Given the conversations that a lot of people have had around his health, when his health was deteriorating up to the point of his death, you could literally really see that he is seen or deemed as irreplaceable. That kind of shows the magnitude of the effect that he's had on the people of Uganda in general. But at the same time, I think reflecting on, some of the other conversations, the kind of regionalization of him as an individual, him being looked at, right, as the exceptional figure, the only one from northern Uganda, from Acholi, who could reach that position, makes me think of, right, us actually being able to create equitable spaces where we don't just have one individual at the helm that is the token and who is seen as, oh, this is the representative of all people from this region, whatever, right? We need more people, right? We need diversity and we need equity in some of these positions so that when someone is passes on or leaves a position, it's not seen as, oh my God, this is the greatest loss this group of people could ever have. There's no one else from them who can actually rise up to those standards. And therefore we need to create conditions where people can see themselves in all these positions. Yes.
All right, fair enough. And thank you really for the time. As the panelists, you've been amazing. Comrade Lawel, Comrade Terry, Comrade Scovia, and Comrade Denis, thank you very much for sparing the time. About the late Right Honorable Speaker, we can only hope that he has joined the likes of Nelson Mandela, the likes of Samora Machel, the likes of Thomas Sankara, and all those great leaders that this world has seen. We only hope that he has joined them and they rejoice upon the life that they've lived and the impact that they've left behind. The Youth Roundtable continues to commemorate with the family of the deceased and the people of Uganda. And we send our heartfelt and sincere condolences to the respective institutions that have, lost this gallant son of the land. To the technical team, thank you very much for ensuring that our viewers get this show right on time. And from me to you, bye-bye. See you next week, same time. Have a lovely week.